It is the 14th of Nisan, and the ancient city of Jerusalem is swelling with crowds preparing for the Passover festival. Inside the city walls, the atmosphere in the upper room is intimate. Jesus shares a final meal with his disciples, breaking bread and kneeling to wash their feet in a display of fellowship. Beneath the warmth of the room sits the unique weight of foresight. Jesus possesses absolute knowledge of what the next 24 hours will hold, while his followers remain unaware of the approaching violence. He looks at the men around the table and details exactly how the night will unfold. He predicts that one specific friend will betray him for 30 pieces of silver, and that the rest of them will utterly abandon him before morning. When the meal concludes, they leave the room and walk into the night. This exit initiates a deliberate, premeditated descent into total isolation. The midnight watch begins among the gnarled olive trees on the slope of the Mount of Olives, in a garden called Gethsemane. The anticipation of the coming trauma exerts such extreme psychological stress that Jesus experiences hematidrosis. This is a documented physiological condition where blood vessels surrounding the sweat glands rupture, causing drops of blood to mix with sweat and fall to the ground. Seeking a fraction of watchful support, he asks his closest friends to stay awake with him for a single hour. He returns to them 3 separate times, in the dark, and each time he finds them asleep. Then comes the physical betrayal. Judas arrives with an armed guard and identifies his teacher with a kiss, taking a standard cultural greeting of affection and turning it into a weapon. In the immediate chaos following the arrest, the disciples panic. Every single one of his followers turns and flees into the surrounding darkness. In the span of a few hours, the most beloved teacher in Judea has been completely cut off from his earthly support system, left alone in the custody of his enemies. This ancient ossuary, discovered in 1990, bears the name of Caiaphas. He was the high priest who architected a midnight trial before the Sanhedrin. To secure a conviction, the council broke their own capital laws by holding the proceeding in secret and in the dark. While the council gathers false testimonies inside the house, the ultimate relational severance happens out in the courtyard. Peter, the disciple who promised his loyalty, denies even knowing Jesus 3 separate times. This stone block, unearthed in 1961, verifies the historical jurisdiction of Pontius Pilate, the Roman prefect of Judea. At dawn, Jesus stands before Pilate in a political trial. Despite acknowledging the prisoner is innocent, Pilate bows to crowd pressure and orders the execution. Before the cross comes the Roman scourging. Soldiers use a flagellum, a leather whip embedded with pieces of bone and metal to shred skin and muscle. The resulting loss of 3 to 5 pints of blood pushes the body into hypovolemic shock before the victim even reaches the execution site. The cowardice of the justice system and the brutal shredding of his flesh strip away his final worldly protections. From this point forward, Jesus is left with nothing but his own resolve. This rusted iron nail driven through an ancient heel bone reveals the true mechanics of Roman crucifixion. With spikes through his ankles and wrists, the victim's ribs lock. To exhale, Jesus must push up, grinding raw nerves against the iron spike with every single breath. As the execution peaks at midday, a severe, anomalous darkness falls over the entire land, consuming the landscape for 3 hours. Suspended in the dark, Jesus experiences total spiritual isolation. At his absolute physical limit, he cries out the opening words of Psalm 22, my God, why have you forsaken me?" The cross functioned as the apex of isolation, a machine engineered to systematically strip a human being of their breath and their dignity. With the final declaration, "It is finished," Jesus bows his head and gives up his spirit. It is a deliberate act of completion, a choice to surrender his life once the work is done. The immediate aftermath explodes into Jerusalem. Inside the temple, the enormous, thick veil separating the people from the Holy of Holies tears violently from top to bottom, physically removing the boundary to the inner sanctuary. With the Sabbath approaching on Friday evening, Joseph of Arimathea secures the body, wraps it in linen, and lays it to rest inside a newly carved rock tomb. The chaotic brutality and agonizing isolation of the final 24 hours represent a deliberate, willing surrender. This calculated path ends in the quiet of the tomb, having permanently torn down the barrier between humanity and the divine.